This conference will now be recorded.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't believe we have any amendments, so I just need to approve the adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0-0. Review the minutes from our March 21st regular meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the March 21st meeting minutes as written.
Second.
Any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0-0. Accounts payable, Kevin.
Two main things to pull attention to. Number 80107 is for the mower, the zero-turn mower for the city. And we did get a trade-in value on that as well, the old one. And then the other one was 80125 for the electric payment. That includes a missed payment, so we were fixing that error and also making the accounts from the previous year up to date. So that's why this one's so large. So I will make a motion to accept the accounts payable in the total of $79,389.64.
I'll second it.
Any questions for Kevin or Kim on accounts payable? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0-0. We'll open the public comment portion. Individuals may address the city council about any item of concern. Speakers must state their name and limit the remarks to 5 minutes. Public comment portion. I will close the public comment portion and we will open the public hearing for SEMCRA Small Cities Development Grant. Patrick and Buffy. Yeah, hold down the middle one, yeah. No, the one, yeah, right in front there, sorry.
Our council, I am Patrick Mishner. I am a community development staff member at SEMTRA. I'm joined today with Buffy Baranik, our executive director. We're here to talk to you about the Small Cities Development Program grant that we are hoping to apply on your behalf for. We're here today to give a general overview, brief history, and then hopefully get your approval for the submission on April 17th. So back in 2022, we obtained approval from the city of Zumbrota to apply. Throughout 2023, we did the work, we surveyed, we drove around, identified potential need, and then in fall of 2023, we applied. DEED came back in early 2024, ranked our grant competitive, which is the highest of the 3 ranks. So we are confident that this is a good grant. We're gonna, what we are proposing today is similar, if not exact, to what we will be getting. For For the timeline, after submission, we are anticipating to hear back in August. Couple months, bring it back, our board, your board, and then we'll hopefully get started late 2024. This is a single purpose application for owner occupied rehab. So that means an individual owns a home. You must be at 80% AMI for the Goodhue County. That's about $60,000 for a 2-person household. We're looking to do 21 rehabs throughout the city. It must be in the city limits. It cannot be beyond those. And in total, we're applying for $597,713. The project in total is $617,713, with $20,000 coming from $10,000 from the city of Zumbrota and $10,000 from the city of Goodhue as well. So, county, sorry. To qualify, you must be 80% AMI, $60,000. The funding is structured as a 7-year deferred forgivable loan. So you must live in that residence for 7 years. If for whatever reason you don't, that money gets repaid to the city. We can then do another project of similar value. Allowable expenses for these projects are kind of focused strictly on structural issues, health and safety concerns, and accessibility. What we mainly do, siding, roofing, windows, doors, kind of grab handles in bathrooms, that sort of thing. We have over 30 years of experience administering these grants across 4 different counties. This is kind of our bread and butter operation. So the only 2 last things, if you are interested in participating as a council member, please abstain from voting. And there is a historic preservation piece. If there's a building that applies for it and is found to be historic, we are required to accommodate whatever preservation needs for that is. So yeah, any comments or questions?
No, I think the council's been aware of it, and we've been working on it for a good year, if not longer. So it's a good program, and I know you guys have done a lot of work to get us here. So, any questions? Perfect. We will jump to 8A. Do that resolution quick. So we'll vote on the resolution 2024-09, authorizing application for the Small Cities Development Program.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2024-09.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Oh, I gotta do a roll call. Sorry. Sarah?
Aye.
Bob? Aye. Joan?
Aye.
Kevin?
Nay.
And I. Passes 4-1-0. Thank you. Since we're on new business, we will jump down to 8E, proclamation for Gary Schroeder. I will have the Schroeder family and the police department come up front while we read this. I'll just read the proclamation. Whereas Police Officer Gary Schroeder Jr. was born April 19th, 1976, and whereas Officer Schroeder obtained his law enforcement degree from Rochester Technical College, whereas Officer Schroeder began his law enforcement career in Grand Meadow, Minnesota in 1999, and was employed by Alden PD in 2000, where he was instrumental in starting the schoolization program before starting his career in Zumbrota. And whereas Officer Schroeder was an exemplary police officer who was admired and respected by his colleagues at Grand Meadow, Alden, and the Zumbrota Police Department, and served with honor, dignity, and pride. And whereas Officer Schroeder was a family man, a devoted father of sons Ethan, Toby, and Jacob, and a loving husband to his wife Kim. Whereas Officer Schroeder struggled with PTSD obtained in the line of duty, the darkness he witnessed on this earth overtook him, and he was brought into the Lord's light on Monday, April 17th, 2023. Now, therefore, the city of Zumbrota recognizes Officer Schroeder for his 18 years of dedicated service to and sacrifice for his fellow citizens with his community. On behalf of the entire Zumbrota community, the city thanks Officer Schroeder for his service and sends its deepest gratitude, thoughts, and prayers to his family, friends, and the entire community. Now, therefore, I, Todd Hamill, Mayor of Zumbrota, declare April 17th of each year in honor and remembrance of Officer Gary Schroeder. And I think the police chief has got something to say.
Certainly been an honor and a privilege to work with Gary as a coworker, but also as a friend. And I think about him frequently. I miss him. I wish he was here. But I do believe someday I'll get to see him again, and we look forward to that event. So thank you, Mayor, for bringing this forth.
I'm so thankful for this community taking care of me and my boys. It's been amazing seeing the people step forward and take care of us. So, thank you.
You want to talk about the memorial too? On that?
Yep, so we're working on a law enforcement memorial that will be placed just outside of the PD. And there's going to be a plaque and a bench in memorial of Gary. So we're planning to have a fundraising event that will start soon as we work out some details. Everything looks fantastic. And so I think it's going to be a highly achievable project and a great asset to the community, and a place for some solace for people to rest and reflect. So.
Big shoulder family. Since we've jumped around, we'll keep on jumping around. We're going to jump to 8C, Dry Bones Open House Event. Brian.
Yes, is Nick here? Did he make it?
Yeah.
Hey, Nick. Yep, so Nick Sinclair from Dry Bones is requesting for a road closure. Gotta find it here. My apologies, let me get to it.
You're requesting the road closed from West Avenue to 3rd Street to 4th Street from 9 to 4 on Saturday, May 4th for an open house event.
Want to just talk about it a little bit, Nick?
We're just gonna do an open house, block it off for classic cars and motorcycles. Pretty much it, free show, not really a show, just kind of a movement. So, free event, open to everyone.
So I can bring my 97 F-150 in, no, my 07 F-150 in there.
Might not get in.
So Nick has talked to all the businesses on that block.
Edward Jones in the apartment complex, I just called them up.
I'll make the motion to approve that road closure for that day.
I'll second.
Any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0-0. Thanks, Nick.
And one other thing, Nick, we don't have any, no parking signs anymore. We gave all those to the Covered Bridge Festival Committee, so
I'll just make some.
contact Holly, or maybe you can use some of those, or
I'll just spray paint on the sidewalk.
just for, yeah.
Or on the side of that building.
Yeah.
Just kind of like tattoos.
Perfect. We will jump back up to public hearings, 6B, a public hearing for facility plan for wastewater system improvements. We'll jump that over to Bill Angerman, our city engineer.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have a presentation tonight on the North Somerville Sanitary District. And with me here tonight is Glenn Gustafson, if Glenn could raise his hand. Glenn is our senior wastewater engineer, and Glenn is the project manager for the project. So what a facilities plan is it's a very long document that goes over a set of specific items that we're going to review tonight. As part of the regulatory process, we are required to have a public hearing. That's what we're here tonight. So we'll have a presentation followed by questions from the public and hopefully answers. So with that introduction, we're gonna head right into it. So Glenn's going to be our advancers. So the items that we have to cover tonight are covered by state statute. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit of background, how we got here. By the way, this happens to be a picture of those of you who haven't seen this. This is Zambroda's existing wastewater treatment plant. which is just on the other side of the bridge from City Hall here. We're going to look at alternatives that were considered. So, we are recommending tonight that the city form a sanitary district, but we did look at other alternatives as well. We'll go over why that was selected. The sanitary district has preliminary agreed upon a site for a purchase agreement, so we'll review that tonight. Then we'll also go over costs, charges, and then lastly, our schedule. Okay, so just a little bit background about Zumbrotah's existing facility. So the existing facility was initially designed in 1960. I think it was probably more built in 60, 61. Major upgrades occurred in 1986, again in 2001, and in 2019. Maybe the important thing to note is that 1986 expansion, which was the main project that occurred there, that was what we like to refer to as the EPA grant days. So starting in the early 1970s, projects built through the 70s, all through the 80s into the early 90s were funded at the federal level as part of the Clean Water Act. Those projects were typically funded at 90%, meaning 90% of wastewater treatment plant construction dollars came from the federal government, 10% local. Those programs ended in the early 90s. Typical wastewater plants last 20 years, maybe the tanks, et cetera, more like 50 years. But what that means now is all those plants that were built in the 70s and 80s are now maybe pushing 20, 30, 40 years. And we have a funding shortage in the state and across the country. So this is a big driver behind this project is how is not only Zumbrotah, but how are the other neighboring communities going to pay for their next wastewater treatment plant. Okay, the current plant also, again, has many equipment needs. So again, most of the items in this plant are either from the mid 80s or from 2001. So 2001 was a retrofit of that equipment that was put in 1986. The current plant as exists today for Zumbrotah does not have capacity for growth. Okay, so Dairy Farmers of America is a big user of the system. They have built their own treatment facility at their plant. So we have capacity for waste strength, but we don't have capacity for volume. So it's kind of a unique position to be in. So the city of Zumbrotah, as we sit today, is basically maxed out with their capacity. So which we've known, we've been planning for, hence why we're here today. Next item, or second from the bottom there, cannot treat for new discharge permit limits. So what that means is new limits are being imposed on the city of Zumbrotah as well as Wanamingo, Goodhue, and Pine Island. Those limits are primarily related to phosphorus. Okay, so when you think of phosphorus, think of fertilizers, things of that sort. This is something that is being mandated on all the states in the Mississippi watershed. You may have heard in the news, there is a dead zone or an area in the Gulf of Mexico that there is, in essence, no oxygen in that part of the Gulf of Mexico from the pollution that is in the Mississippi River. So one of the primary pollutants is phosphorus. So what we're seeing is all the plants in Minnesota are required to treat for phosphorus. Our plant, as it sits today, is not capable of treating for phosphorus. So that is also a driver behind this. And then lastly, as our operators that are sitting to my right can attest to, when you have a plant that is built in the 80s, some of it's still from the 60s, it does require a high level of maintenance. So we just have things that are purely just simply stated getting old. All right, so what we looked at was various alternatives. So the first thing we looked at is could we upgrade and expand the existing Zumbrotah facility? So that was one of our choices. One of our other choices would that we would construct a new regional wastewater treatment facility. Okay, and then within that, there's some other sub choices. What we looked at was combining with Pine Island, Wanamingo, and Goodhue to form a sanitary district. So basically its own governing body that would treat the wastewater from the four communities. And then that sub bullet down there, those are the specific things that we looked at under that second choice. So what was selected or is recommended to move forward is that we would construct a new regional wastewater treatment facility. And that facility would be what's called an oxidation ditch. That's a specific type of wastewater treatment. And that it would be located as near as possible to Zumbrotah's existing facility. Why Zumbrotah? Zumbrotah is basically the geographic center of Wanamingo, Pine Island, and Goodhue. So Zumbrota is the central location. Hence why we're looking at building a plant in Zumbrota. Okay, so as I mentioned, the 4 communities, we did originally start off, we also had Mazeppa in the mix, but Mazeppa did withdraw. They have elected to go on their own. The 4 communities, they have entered into a joint powers agreement. So council members, you guys have been seeing this for several years now, but there is an agreement in place between the 4 communities to form a sanitary district. The construction aspect of this is that the sanitary district would construct what these are the technical terms, a lift station. So think of a lift station, those are pumps, and a force main is a pipe. So there would be basically piping would be built to connect the 4 communities. Those pipes, most people when we talk about think they're really big pipes, but those pipes would range in size, like in a good use case, an 8-inch pipe. The largest pipe would be more on the 16 to 18-inch range from Pine Island. So those pipes would be installed, in essence, connecting the 3 communities to Zumbrota. Then that new facility would be built here. As I mentioned, that was that oxidation ditch, and that's a type of plant. And then after this was up and running, the existing facility here would be decommissioned. Okay, so how would this be operated? So the North Somerville Sanitary District would be their own entity. Okay, so that means they would be their own governing body. There's a process that you follow through statute. The city of Zumbrota, as well as Pine Island, Wanabing, and Goodhue would have representatives on that board, but they would maintain, they would establish their own budgets. They would have their own meetings, much like a city council meeting, and then they would bill the 4 communities based on their usage. That district then would maintain those pipes between the communities. They would operate the facility. They would hire their own staff. They would basically operate independently, but in conjunction with the 4 communities. And then the city, though, would still maintain, the pipes that are in the streets within the city of Zumbrota itself. So there would still be what we call a sanitary sewer collection system. So that's pipes, manholes, et cetera, throughout the community. All right. So one of the things we show is, the route, from each of the communities. Well, in Zumbrota's case, we are looking at the land. So the area there where that red line is on the left, that is the existing plant. We are looking at buying property immediately to the east of this site. We'll show that in a little bit. The kind of the white hashed area there, that line signifies the city limits. So what we'd be doing is we'd be pumping the wastewater that already gets to that plant just to the east. There's a purchase agreement in place to buy land from Jim and Connie Wendt. So that is where that pipe goes to, where a new facility would be built. Okay, so this is if you can kind of see in that upper left-hand corner, you can see the lagoons there. This is what's being proposed. What's being proposed is the purple color there, that the sanitary district would buy approximately 44 acres from the Wentz. There would be the wastewater treatment plant would be built inside of that. Those circles represent tanks. The squares represent tanks as well. This facility then, again, would be owned and operated by the sanitary district. What we're showing kind of that lower right would be there'd be an access road. The intent is that this facility would have trees, plantings, and berm around it, but ultimately there would be houses and there would be a subdivision built around this. Now, ultimately, the Wentz still own that land, or they'll own the land on the west side, the east side, and the south. So it'll be up to them to decide. But we did work through that process with the Wentz as far as what could potentially be developed around this facility. I'll just pause there a little. Oh, go back there, Glenn. I'll just pause there a little bit. Okay, I'll just pause everybody. Look at that one other thing there. You see that kind of that yellow line through the middle? So that is the Xcel Energy, the big power lines that go through. So the power lines do kind of split this site. So just as a reference point, I think everybody's probably aware of where those are on the east side of the city. So sorry about that, Glenn, if you go to the next slide. All right, project costs. So this is really why we're looking at this, because this is really the cheapest option. So the project costs to do this are estimated at $111 million. So a big component of this is that a project of this nature with this kind of collaboration between the 4 communities and the Prairie Island Indian community, which is located in Pine Island, really sets us up better to receive grant dollars from the state. That is a key component of this. As I mentioned, those grant programs at the federal level really stopped around 1990. There's really not any other fund. There's limited funding. I better be careful. There's limited funding available. And individual communities have had a hard time receiving grant funding from the state. Hence, we think this is a better project when communities are collaborating, working together. So that up on the top there where it says facility, the cost split. So what we had to do then is we had to calculate, each of the cities then had to project out for 20 years their growth, both in what we call flow. TSS stands for suspended solids, and BOD stands for biochemical oxygen demand. What are those? What's that mean? That's the strength of the waste. So we asked each of the communities to project out over the next 20 years, how much are you going to grow? What's the characteristics of your waste strength? How many industries are you going to add, et cetera? So all 4 communities have done that. And then based on that, then there's a cost share that then gets calculated from that. So that's a little bit of a challenging process. You know, cities have to say, how much do we want to grow? Knowing that if we're going to grow, we got to pay for it. And then, you know, we need those homes and those businesses to be built. So that's a big source of discussion that has been occurring, you know, for probably the last year or so. So that project cost at $111 million, Zumbrota calculates out to roughly 39% of that, which would mean Zumbrota's share is approximately $43 million. So what we looked at, or what we're doing currently now, so is we are at the legislature, we have bills introduced to fund half of this project. So 2 years ago, so the state considers projects to fund on even years. So I say that's like think 2020, 2022, 2024. So every even year they look at construction projects across the state to fund. The state did not pass a bill in 2022. They couldn't reach an agreement, but they did pass one in 23. So this project was partially funded. So the state did provide $10 million to this project. And now the 4 cities are currently asking for the remainder of that. So they're asking for $44 million. So if the cities are successful, that would drop Zumbrota's share from 43 million down to 22 million. Okay, so that is that's a very large amount of money, and it's a very large grant. If we would be successful, which we believe we will, but that's to be determined. One of the things to note on that, for significant industrial users in a community, so in Zumbrota's case, Dairy Farmers of America, and Pine Island's case, Land O'Lakes, they would also be paying their fair share. So that $22 million, approximately $6 million of that would be paid by Dairy Farmers of America. Okay, so we are at the beginning of this process. So there's still much work to be done, but that leaves Zumbrota, the actual city itself, share of about $16 million. Okay, so why is that good for the city of Zumbrota? At the very bottom, you see Zumbrota did this on their own. If they expanded and built their own plant, that's estimated to be approximately $30 million. So, and Zumbrota on its own, what we have been told and what we've from past experiences, individual cities securing grant dollars from the state, it's very challenging. Why is that challenging? Because everybody has a project like this, so you need to be unique, you need to be different. So 4 communities banding together, or 5 if you count Prairie Island Indian Community, is a very interesting and unique story. That does not happen, collaboration like that. And that is what we are finding, that our legislators, they want that. They want that kind of collaboration because they want to make sure, as we do all, that we are spending tax dollars efficiently. So that is the story that we are sharing with our elected officials. I think I've covered all those items on there, but I'll just pause a little bit. It's a lot of numbers, so apologize for that. So, okay, Glenn, next one, please. All right, so what does this mean? What does this boil down to? So as part of a facility plan, what we have to look at is an average user. Okay, average user is defined by so many gallons a month. Again, so this is going to vary depending upon, you know, how much water you use, how big your family is, et cetera, if you're a business. But currently, an average user in the city of Zumbrota pays $42 a month for sanitary sewer, okay? So projected is if we receive the bonding bill dollars, again, we pay for about half of this, that would go from $42 a month to $90 a month. So basically that would double. Okay, that is a big increase. I guess if there's a positive out of this, if Zumbrota did that on their own, it would not go up to 90, it would go up to 150 to 180. So instead of doubling, it would go up 4 times. And this is what Goodhue, Wanamingo, Pine Island are also faced with. So the math of this makes this, we think, a pretty obvious choice. That is in all of our best interest to band together. Not only is there the capital cost, but there's also the ongoing what we call operation and maintenance. So instead of having 4 plants that we're running with 4 sets of operators, 4 sets of electricity, pumps, etc., we'd be having 1 set of everything. So as we move forward, year 5, 10, 20 down the road, we would also save a significant amount of money in future operation maintenance. So in essence, what we're saying is over time, this becomes not always a good choice up front, becomes even a better choice long term. Again, that's why we're doing this. And then last item there are additional funding options. So for example, but to put it in perspective, you guys have heard of earmarks, that's our congressionally directed spending. So we will be pursuing federal dollars, but for example, this year, the federal dollar cap is $5 million. So again, small items, but not that I want to say $5 million is small, but relative to the overall size of this project. But we will continue to pursue other funding avenues as we move forward with this process. Okay, timeline. So this is not something that happens overnight. We started this project way back in 2020. It doesn't seem that long ago, but it's already been 4 years. So it kind of lays out what we have done. That the 4th bullet down there, 2023, the state did provide a grant of $10 million for the land acquisition to buy that 43.5 acres. Also for the engineering, permitting, and the other things that go along with this. So now we're at where the line across there. So the first step is we have to submit facility plans. So again, that's that large document that basically summarizes all the things we're talking about tonight. So we're anticipating that approval on that will occur in the next couple months. We will continue to do design work. We'll also continue permitting. There's also an environmental review process. So this is not the first public hearing we will have. There are also future steps to occur. There's future things that occur at this council and all the other councils. So really, this is our first step in that fairly long process tonight. It will take us about 2 years to make it through that process. So again, permitting, environmental review, design, land acquisition, with a goal of beginning construction in 2026. Okay? That construction date is highly dependent upon what the legislature does this session. So Mayor Hamill and Administrator Grudem and maybe some of the other council members, we've been having a regular contingent from the 4 cities at the Capitol, meeting with our senators, our representatives, again, to make sure to communicate how important this is to our 4 communities to, again, get that funding. If we would be unsuccessful in obtaining funding this year, I guess the short answer, Brian, is we'll deal with that if that would happen. But we would have to have a discussion here with all the cities. Most likely what would happen is we would try again. But again, we've been asked that a couple of times. Well, what happens if? And I think we'll make the best decision at that time. So right now there's a full-on lobbying effort that's occurring at the Capitol to fund this project. Ultimately, it'd take about 2 years to construct. So this would go into place in 2028. So that gives about 4 years. So those sewer numbers are not they will change by then, inflation, et cetera. The economy, what will happen, but that is what our estimate is today. And hopefully that'll give us some time to prepare. It's a big ouch, but it's the unfortunate part is it's coming regardless. So just the age of our own facility here in Zumbrota and the new regulations that are being forced upon us or being put upon us. And last one is questions. So part of this process, we do have to record and track all our questions tonight. We will prepare written answers to any questions that we receive. But these are just a photo here of some of our legislative efforts there. This is a meeting that occurred last summer with our local elected officials and our state elected officials. And then down in the lower right-hand corner is we do have an executive committee. And this is comprised of the 3 city administrators, so Pine Island, Wanamingo, and Zumbrota, and the mayor of Goodhue. So we do meet monthly. Those meetings are open to the public. We do publish an agenda, minutes, et cetera. So that is typically included in our Zumbrota packet. So if people want to receive information. We also, we have a domain name for a website. We will be launching that shortly. It'll be northzumbro.com. So again, the information we have, like this facilities plan, other things we'll be having, all our information will be available, moving forward for the public. So, Mayor, with that is the end of our presentation. But as part of this process, then we would like to entertain questions.
Yeah, so if anybody has any questions concerning this project, state the name and where you live.
I was going to grab a mic if somebody had a question.
Any questions or concerns on this issue? I will close the public portion of this. Thanks, Bill, for that. I know the council and myself have seen this presentation more than once over the last couple of years. So excited to get this project going and the 4 communities working together. We will jump down to 8B, Resolution 2024-10, adopting a facilities plan for the wastewater system improvements. Mr. Grudem.
Oh, yep, after the presentation, now we need to give the okay or the nay, or whatever the council decides, on adopting the facilities plan for the wastewater system improvements related to the North Zumbro Sanitary District. Basically, this will say, yep, go forward, submit the facilities plan.
Yeah, we'd be happy to entertain any questions from the council.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2024-10. I'll second.
Any further discussions? We will do roll call. Sarah?
Aye.
Bob? Aye. Joan? Aye. Kevin? Aye. Passes 5-0-0. Let's jump down to 8D, Resolution 2024-11, application for a workforce housing grant committing to provide matching funds. Brian?
There she is. We've got Jessica from Ellers joining us tonight to do the presentation on this. So we talked about this a little bit at the last council meeting. Andy Bartman and Bob Keller approached us about possible another apartment building here in Zumbrota and asked if we would partner in applying for a workforce development grant, which would help them keep rents where they, very low for the area, which is good for the city as well. So that's what we're working on, is getting this grant prepared. And part of that grant is some matching funds. And, we'll discuss a tax increment financing for that. And Jessica's been very involved, and this has been a whirlwind the last been a week and a half or so. So a big thank you to Jessica for all of her work in putting this together. Andy Bartman and Bob Keller are here with us in the room tonight as well. And so, yeah, Jessica, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I apologize that you got your material on this subject this afternoon. As Administrator Grudem said, we have been working closely with the developer and the city on making sure that this project would meet all the criteria for the for the grant funding from the state of Minnesota. And that has been, as you said, a whirlwind the last 2 weeks, and it came together early this morning. So again, my apologies. Because you probably haven't had a time to review the material, I will step through it with some care so that I'm sure that you are aware of everything that's in there. So the first thing is, as was mentioned, Keller Bartman Properties came to the city and has a site identified, the bank building downtown on 3rd Street as a redevelopment site for 38 units of multifamily housing. And this housing would be market rate housing, so there's no affordability component. And it's designed to provide opportunities so that the state has recognized that lack of housing is a barrier to business development. And so this program is designed to promote market rate housing to serve businesses in a community and businesses that want to come to a community. When we received the proposal a couple weeks ago, the total amount of assistance that was requested from the city was a little over $2 million. And that's shown on a table on the first page of the memo. There were several different components of that funding. The biggest one, of course, is tax increment financing. And in a moment, I'll give a little background on what tax increment financing is. They also requested that certain fees would be waived and that the city would come out of pocket for site preparation to demo the project and to pay for some sidewalk and asphalt work, et cetera. In talking with Administrator Grudem, it became clear that the city doesn't have the $165,000 or so to come out of pocket for those costs. So that request was removed from consideration right away. The next task was to look at what was left. Well, then there was waiving the building permit fees, and it was Eller's recommendation not to do that because you as a city incur costs in at supervising the construction and making sure that it's adequate, and you pay a building inspector to do that. So that would have also been an out-of-pocket cost. So that's not on the table anymore. The two sources of assistance that are still on the table for consideration this evening are the tax increment in about $1.75 million and waiving SAC and WAC fees for $62,700. SAC and WAC fees, I know we have a lot of people in the audience here that may not be familiar with that term. Those are fees to connect to the sewer and the water system when there's new development. And the city uses them to pay for things like the new water treatment plant. And the amount requested to be waived is $62,700 for that. So our task at Ellers was to evaluate this request and to answer the question, is it needed for the project to be financially feasible? And so we received financial information from the developer about what their rents would be, what their costs would be, what their interest rate on the loan was going to be, what their grant request was from Minnesota Housing. And we put that into our underwriting pro forma. It's a pro forma is just a term for the cash flow for the project. And we made some adjustments to their numbers to make that we thought were more consistent with the marketplace. So I'll address those in a minute. The first thing I wanted to, or the next thing I wanted to talk about is what tax increment financing is, or what TIF is, and how can the city come up with $1,075,000 to assist a project like this, because obviously you don't have that in your fund balance available for this purpose. The way TIF works is you would put the bank building and the parcel next to it, which would be used for parking, into what's called a TIF district. And then the taxes on the value of that property as it stands today, so the existing bank building, would continue to go to the county, the city, and the school district as they do today. However, we're replacing that structure with 38 units, and the value is going to grow. So what happens in the tax increment financing district is that increase in value is captured, the taxes related to that increase in value is captured and all sent to the city as tax increment. And then the city uses that tax increment to help pay for the project. So the next question you might have is, we get taxes every year over time. How is the future tax revenue going to pay for the construction cost of this project up front? Because that's when we need the money. And the answer is that we use a tool called a pay-as-you-go note, sometimes referred to as a pay-go note, in case you've heard that term before. And the way that works is the city would say to Keller Bartman Properties, we promise to pay you a certain percentage of the increment for a certain number of years. And you can use that to go borrow money today. If the tax increment isn't as much as we projected, you're at risk. So there isn't any risk to the city if the value of the property doesn't turn out to grow as much as we expect it to. So I'm going to stop there. Are there any questions about tax increment in general that you'd like me to answer?
When I first looked at this, I thought I'd be confused, but what you're explaining is making total sense. So thank you for being thorough.
That's a relief. It is confusing. And when Mr. Engerman said a lot of numbers, I thought they don't know what's coming. So, okay, so that's the tool that's being proposed. The $1,075,000 value is the value to the developer, is the amount that the developer has requested, and that would be the value he could get today. So the actual amount of the tax increment, it will be more than that over the 26 years. So what's proposed is 26 years of increment. 95% of the increment would go make payments on this pay-as-you-go note to reimburse the developer to pay for the construction cost of this project. So I'm now on page 2 of the memo, if you're following along. And in the middle of that page is the sources and uses chart. Now, I want to be clear that these are not the sources and uses that the developer has proposed for the project. These are the sources and uses that I tweaked to make sure that all this tax increment that's being proposed was actually needed for the project. He can go get whatever sources and uses he can, but I wanted to make sure that the city wasn't being asked to over-subsidize the project. So, for example, the first mortgage, we want to make sure that the developer is getting as big a loan as they can. So this $4 million mortgage is slightly higher than what the developer was proposing. That doesn't require the developer to go get a $4 million mortgage, but we're saying we think you can, and we think you should maximize that source of funding. So this is my adapted sources and uses. The overall project is almost 11.2 million, which is almost $300,000 per unit. And sadly, that is in line with what we're seeing as construction costs in the marketplace, especially if there's underground parking. In terms of the uses, another adjustment I made was I reduced the developer fee on the project. Now, the developer can, from his ultimate sources and uses, can take an appropriate fee, and that will be also regulated by the state funding. But I wanted to make sure that the developer wasn't going to be unduly enriched. So I reduced the fee to 5%, which is for a project the size is an appropriate developer fee. So that was my role in the project, was to massage the developer's numbers. And so the next section of the memo talks about the tax increment. And then the part after that, the pro forma analysis, gives some detail about changes I made to the pro forma and what was reasonable and what wasn't. And I won't drag you through that detail. That's just for your reference. The one thing I did want to say is the bottom paragraph on page 2 about the tax increment if you recall, the tax increment is derived from the growth of value from the construction. We are estimating what we think the value of the housing will be assessed at by the county assessor. We got an estimate from the county assessor, and she thought it would be valued between 4.75 and 5.5 million. That is not enough value to generate the full amount of the tax increment request from the developer. That would require a value of 5.6 million. It also assumes that that value is going to go up every year. And so there'd be more increment available each year. We had a robust discussion with the developer about what that value should be. And ultimately, the developer said, it's my risk, because if the value isn't there, I don't get the tax increment. I took a loan out, I'm going to have to make up the difference. But if the value is there, then the city is agreeing to pay 95% of the increment up to the $1,751,000. So the reason I go into that detail is I don't want a situation to come about where the value is not what we had hoped it would be, and the developer comes and says, I'm not getting all my money, and you don't understand that's okay. They're taking the risk. So I think the last thing I want to mention, I'll skip now to page 4. There are city costs associated. Well, first of all, let me talk a little bit about the Minnesota Housing Grant Program, which is not on page 4. So I divert a little bit. That program is a program that the city has to be the applicant for. And then the city gives, it's a deferred loan program, so it comes in as a 0% loan, and then if you build the housing within 3 years, the loan is forgiven. So it's like a grant. You can apply for up to 50% of the project costs, but you're more competitive if you're only asking for 25% of the project costs. So we're sizing the grant application at 25% of the project costs, which is about 2.8 million. So that grant program also has some guardrails in it for you, because they're also going to be underwriting the project, and they're going to have rules about the developer not getting more than a certain reasonable return on investment, et cetera. So it's not just Ellers saying that this amount of tax increment is appropriate. You'll also have the people at the state of Minnesota making sure that's the case as well. There are some costs to the city involved in being the applicant and creating the TIF district. So it's $7,000 to apply to the state of Minnesota. You would have to establish the TIF district. There's the cost of my time to do this analysis. So we're estimating those total costs will be up to $37,000. And the developer has agreed to pay for those up front. That would be an escrow. And then if the project doesn't proceed or not all of that is spent, then whatever is unused would go back to the developer. But the goal is to not have the city out of pocket up front for this project. So our recommendation is wrong on page 4. I was struggling with my file, and the wrong table got copied into this memo, so my apologies. If you go back to page 1, our recommendation would be that the project is justified to receive up to the $1,750,000 in tax increment and the $62,700 in waiving of SAC and WAC fees. The next steps, if you want to proceed with this, would be to apply to the state of Minnesota for the funding. And there's a resolution that is required to do that, and that was also distributed this afternoon in your packet. So what I'd like to do is step through some of the things that you would be certifying to in that resolution, so that you'd be aware of your commitments. So one of the be it resolved clauses in that resolution is that you're committing to match the state money $1 for $2. So for every $2 of state money that the project gets, $1 would come from this local match. The proposed amount of local assistance with the TIF and the fee waiver exceeds that 1-to-2 match. So it shouldn't be any difficulty meeting that. But I wanted to be sure to highlight that point. Another thing that you're certifying in this resolution is that the vacancy rate in Zumbrota and in communities within 15 miles of Zumbrota has been 5% or less than in the last 2 years. And we, not me, the community development staff did a survey of apartments and rental property in the city, and I believe that came back at 4.8%. So it met the criteria. So those are the two key things that you would be committing to if you choose to consider and adopt this resolution tonight and become the applicants for this state funding. And with that rather lengthy explanation, I will pause and see if there are questions.
I was wondering, when we did one a few years ago, how it compared to this. I don't remember the exact numbers.
You know, the developers are here and they could probably weigh in. My memory is that it was a similar level of assistance.
It was a 95% TIF, and there was quite a bit of upfront money in that one. That the city kicked in for sidewalks and things like that.
So it's pretty,
It's similar.
it's similar to what we did on the previous side.
Yep.
Any questions for others?
I guess the one question I have, I might be missing something here, but we're looking at the TIF money, SAC and WAC fees, and we're applying for a $2-point-something million grant. So the 2.8 million plus all the TIF money is also going to the project. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
There's a real imbalance in the marketplace right now that with the $300,000 construction costs and interest rates around 8%, but rents, fortunately for renters, have not kept pace in the community to generate the kind of revenue to pay for that. And that's why without assistance, you aren't seeing much development occurring. It's not that there isn't demand for housing, it's that the numbers aren't working.
I talked extensively with Andy and Bob, and they worked really hard with their numbers to get rents as low as they possibly could. And then that's where this funding help comes in, because they want to bring people to town. They want to fill up these apartments, as well. And so they're looking to keep rents, relatively low in the area.
How long is it going to take for that to catch up to itself?
For the market to, I think there's, in the metro area, I think if interest rates fall, it will self-correct. But in greater Minnesota, rents just aren't at the levels that make this work. And so this program that the state has put together is entirely for greater Minnesota communities. Metro communities can't apply for it.
Tool to get housing built. Because of the rent, the tip and this grant. There's different forms, there's always different ways that they've had different programs over the years, many different things, but this is what's available today.
And with this, what we would be asking you to authorize is, I gotta make sure I word this right, authorize staff, Todd and I will sign, and to move forward with this grant. And also application for a grant, and also commit to providing the $1 for every $2 matching through, in this case, TIF and waiving of the sack and whack fees. Is that, did I characterize that correctly, Jessica?
Yes, and the city match, the TIF and the waiving of the fees is contingent upon the project getting funded by the state. So if the project doesn't get funded by the state, there's no obligation for the city to provide the tax increment. But the state is looking for that commitment right now.
24th? 24th or 25th. Yeah, 24th, end of the month, but you want to get in just a hair ahead of that, so. And we're working with the CEDA grant writers as well. They're doing a couple of these already, so.
Because when we first sat down with Keller and Bartman, we had CEDA, Ron Ziegler, because they're aware of this grant pretty, so he was there to help us with questions that we had for Keller and Bartman too, so. And when did we sit down? Was that a month ago we sat down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just weigh in for a minute, just so the council is aware? We've done, multiple TIF projects within the cities over the year. This isn't, other than Keller Barton, of course, is a housing TIF. We have done 2 other housing TIFs in the city, which would be the Armory Apartments and Jefferson Heights. So I just wanted to make you aware that this housing project TIFs have been done in the city before. Possibly not with the structure or with this grant structure available, but they have been done. So it is not something we haven't done before.
And technically, this would be a redevelopment TIF district because it's a site that needs redevelopment. But that's a technical, that's something that us nerds care about, so.
Yeah, and keeping in mind the advantages of the tool of TIF, being able to get something like this in your community, it's going to bring in a lot of people, a lot more people to downtown. Could free up some of the smaller homes around town. The older generation looking to get out of all the maintenance of mowing lawn, shoveling, and all that. And I think Bob and Andy saw that when they had their open house. They had a lot of inquiries on the larger ones, the 2 and 3 bedroom apartments. So that's what got them thinking, hey, maybe we can do another one here in Zumbrota, just with the interest that they had for those type of units. And those people that are coming in are spending money in our community. So, we would, with the TIF tool, yes, we're paying back those taxes for 26 years, but we're realizing all that extra, ancillary benefits for that whole time. And those are tax dollars we would not have otherwise had with the apartment building anyway. So, and also, when Dylan was here and CEDA, we talked extensively about, do we look for industry first or housing first? And the feeling was always that, well, you got to have housing before you can attract industry or larger, businesses like that. So that's another reason why this is appealing, at least to administration, to try and put this together. I think it's a great project, and good site for it. It's right downtown where people have access to all of our amenities. A lot of people might not have a car. They're probably going to walk everywhere downtown. So, yeah.
Any more questions, council? For anybody here? Okay, so we are going to vote on resolution 2024-11 to go forward with the application for the workforce housing grant. We will do roll call or a motion, sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2024-11. Second.
Any further discussion? We'll do roll call. Sarah?
Aye.
Bob?
Nay.
Joan?
Aye.
Kevin, sorry.
Aye.
And I passes 4-1-0. Thanks Keller and Bartman and Ellers for a great job of putting that together, and city staff for working on that.
And I will fix the memo and send it to you so you can have in the official packet for the meeting the correct information.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, let's jump to some good news for a while, at least for one item. We're going to jump down to 8F, the wastewater treatment facility operational award. I'll have Jeff and Paul please stand quick for everybody. I think everybody knows who they are, but they got recognized by the Minnesota Pollution Control for exceptional compliance with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, the NPDES and the SDS wastewater permit during the 2023 review period. We asked Paul and Jeff to be here tonight. These are the guys that make that old plant run. And I know they've had to do some creative things to keep it running and switching things out and cleaning. And I just wanted to give them both a big thanks, and the rest of the street guys for getting this award and working hard on that plant. And I know sometimes it can, excuse my French, be a little bit of a bitch to keep going. So I appreciate your guys' work, and great job. Thank you. Okay, let's jump to 8G, Charlie Nelson encroachment agreement. Kurt?
All right. Planning and Zoning Commission is seeking
Turn the mic on.
approval of an encroachment agreement.
Kurt, Mike.
Olmsted. Planning and Zoning Commission is seeking approval of an encroachment agreement of an accessory structure, which is a shed with lean-to, located in the rear lot line between Charles and Diane Nelson's parcel and the Covered Bridge Park, which is owned by the city of Zumbrota. The home is located at 109 Sugarloaf Lane. There's a timeline here. As you can see, originally a variance was applied for, and then the wording of the variance was sent back from the city council back to planning and zoning. And we introduced an encroachment agreement. The encroachment agreement is attached to your memo. And Mr. and Mrs. Nelson signed the agreement on the 27th and was given to Matt, and it's brought to the city council for approval. The encroachment agreement was approved 4-0-0 by the Planning and Zoning Commission with the city's council's approval. The agreement will be filed with Goodhue County. So we're looking for an approval.
Any questions for Kurt on this encroachment for Mr. Nelson? I know it's been something that we've worked on a little while.
I'll make a motion to approve the encroachment agreement.
Second.
Any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0-0. I want to thank Kurt and the Planning Commission for getting that done. 8H funds transfer. Kim?
Well, this is kind of some fun things, I guess, well, at least for an accounting nerd. So when we did the street projects for West Avenue, or East Avenue and St. Paul Road, we had some special assessment projects on there. And as you know, special assessments can be paid up front or paid over time. Some of the residents that were there opted to have theirs paid over time, so we needed to pay for the actual building of the road. And so at that time, we took out some loans from the water restricted fund, with the understanding that as the special assessments were paid back, that those monies would pay back the water restricted fund. So what I'm asking you to do in the first one is just allow me to transfer those monies to the water restricted fund from the East Avenue capital project and the St. Paul Road capital project funds in the total amount of $74,064.81.
Does that mean it's all repaid then?
Then it is all repaid. There will be some residual, which is, I'm just trying to remember now how that one's working. We will be putting that possibly in some capital restricted funds, or maybe for some other projects we have coming up with stormwater, because there will be continued special assessments. I believe there's about $225,000 in special assessments yet to come in.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 500. Thanks, Kim. Let's do it again. Closeout bond
All
fund
right.
518.
Well, we've paid off bond 518, which was the 2010 B bond. That money was used to construct the commercial park way back in the day. And so there's some residual monies left in there. That money initially came when there's a little fronting of money. It comes from municipal reserve. So we do have some money left in that fund in the amount of, excuse me, I'm flapping back and forth between. Thank you.
$28,650.47.
And then I'd like to put that back in the municipal reserve fund, close that fund out. It will be gone. So
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 500. Thanks again, Kim. 8J, Nielsen's CBD license requests. Mr. Grudem.
Oh, yes, we've got a memo in the packet from Miranda. New cannabinoid license application from Nielsen Foods. I'm just recommending approval of that.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 500. 8K, set work sessions. Brian.
Yes. We'd like to set up a couple of work sessions. We want to start getting into some very preliminary budget discussions. And also, at the April 10th meeting, we would like to look at trying to allocate the remaining ARPA dollars. That's due by the end of the year, the allocation, or it has to be spent by the end of the year, Kim? Is that what it was? Committed. Yeah, has to be committed by the end of the year. So we just want to have a discussion about that at the April 10th requested work session. The second work session would be requested Wednesday, May 8th, for purposes of continuing budget discussion and also allocation of the public safety dollars. Public safety dollars has no end to it. So we would like to hold that one off until May 8th and have a good long discussion on that.
What time?
5:30 to 7 both days. April 10th and May 8th. And I will not be at the May 8th because I will be somewhere, Florida, sorry.
I probably won't make the 8th either. I got hip replacement on the 6th.
All right, is there another
don't think I
date
can
in
You've
there?
been laying carpet for a while then.
You said May 8th,
Yeah.
both of you?
Oh, I know. Already had one done.
Do we want to do it the same week as council? Do it the 15th and have council on the 16th? Oh, yeah, we have EDA that day too. Jump to the week of the 20th?
Or it could be the 29th.
Are you speaking of May again, or?
Yeah.
If you didn't want to do it during council week, it doesn't matter to me.
I mean, it's up to you if you, I mean, 'cause I know the week of the third week, I have council, EDA and code all that week, so. I mean,
Oh, the 22nd. Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't have.
So I'm open, I mean, except for that week of the 8th. Kevin, what does your schedule look like?
I'm pretty flexible in May.
Monday night doesn't work for me with fire.
Okay.
On a Friday morning. I'm just kidding.
Um,
29th. Is that too late for us, Kim, for budget wise? And
We're starting the discussion on 10.
Yep.
I think that we'd have more time to feed it back to the staff.
Okay. So,
You want to
yeah.
do it the 29th?
May
5:30. So we'll do April 10th from 5:30 to 7, and then we'll do it May 29th, same time. And I know I've instructed the staff that they get an hour and a half, and that's it. So I know Brian likes to talk with me.
In a few words.
So we'll do April 10th and May 29th, 5:30 to 7 for a work session.
I'll make a motion to approve those two work sessions.
Perfect.
Second.
Any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, passes 500.
Hey, Todd, why don't you do reports first, since we're going to.
Okay, we'll jump to reports quick.
Nothing.
Matt? Bill?
One quick item. Brian maybe told us, we've been talking about the 9th Street project for some time. So we are tentatively bringing that to the April 18th council meeting. Okay, that's an assessment project. So that starts about a 3-month process, kind of like a facilities plan. You have to have a preliminary report. You have to set a public hearing. So there's some steps that will begin in tentatively in 2 weeks. So thank you, Mayor.
Kim? Mike? I have nothing, Sarah? Oh, shit, James, sorry. James?
Really complicated report tonight, but I'll see.
Perfect, thank you. Sarah? Bob?
No.
Joan? Kevin?
Just one item of note, May 19th through 25th is EMS week, and the Zumbrota Area Ambulance will be having an open house at some point during that week. The date is not yet set.
Perfect. Thank you. Now we will have a closed session. We will close this meeting for purposes of an attorney-client privilege pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05, subdivided 3B, in the order to discuss an active lawsuit, Schuman versus the City of Zumbrota. Our attorney, Paul Meerwin, is here to discuss the statute of the case and provide legal advice. A closed session balanced the general requirements that the city business shall be conducted in public with the need for the council to get unbiased and candid legal advice that will help us fulfill our responsibility to act in the best interest of the city. Did I do a good job, Matt? I'm going to step up.